afternoon, everyone. This is your host, Ben Cancio of the Ben Cancio Show. Joaquin Harvesisima is my special guest today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to get into these poems.
All right, so for those of you who don't know, today we'll be analyzing a set of poems from Marne Quilates. This is mostly in monsoon weather. Joaquin, what did you think about this whole set of poems?
I thought that the collection is really represents the author.
Also,
It represents his uniqueness because he has a way of using imagery to express his memories, his life experiences, and in most of these poems he tries to relate to the Filipino readers in the Filipino context. And in some of these poems, I really found myself laughing because for me the author is really funny.
really funny.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to be fair, I did also feel that sense of relatability as a fellow Filipino. Let's go over the poems now.
Yes.
All right, so our first poem for today is Sometime Mornings Sestina. Before we start, actually, let me talk about what a sestina poem is. It's a kind of poem with usually 6 stanzas. It's 6 lines per stanza, although this particular poem has only 4. And the line endings for the first stanza are repeated in the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth in a somewhat pattern order. We're going to see that soon enough as we dive into this poem. Joaquin, what did you think of it?
I thought that the story is really nice. From the beginning, like the first 2 stanzas, the author describes his daily routine, and while
What's his daily routine?
it says here he was on his way to work, and then while he was doing that, he catches himself imagining, and that's where like his reminiscing back to his youth begins. It starts in stanza 1, and then into 2 also, and then these descriptions, this imagery is like also relatable for Filipinos because this is basically how we grew up, seeing like different scenes, different sceneries.
Well, I mean, we can't do that much during the pandemic, but I agree. When we were younger, we used to do all sorts of those things. Hopefully, once the new normal passes, we'll be able to do that again. I am a bit confused on the third and fourth stanzas. They're a little bit different, the tone of the poem changes, and I want you to describe that change to our audience.
Okay, so the first and second poems differ from the third and fourth because the first half of the poem.
Stanzas, not poems.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. We all make mistakes every once in a while.
Replace poems with stanzas. So the first 2 stanzas, they were like physical descriptions, no? And for the third and fourth stanza, they have more of these metaphors because that's how, like, this is like showing the author's reflection on his past and present and how they connect, no? Especially in stanza 3, and it talks about how tomorrow is a new day, so he looks forward for tomorrow, no? And for the fourth stanza,
actually, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Were you referring to the lines 4 to 6 of stanza 3? In between, as if in a dream, always passing, as each morning never fails to spill away in harshest daylight, what night and the past have left. Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, basically, yeah. And
I
for
kind of got a similar idea from that.
yeah, and for the fourth stanza, it serves like a conclusion. Basically, this whole stanza is like the persona missing his childhood and how he has to like grasp his past in order to move forward in his life. That's basically it.
Okay.
I guess.
Another important thing to note is that he uses real Filipino locations like C5 and Bicutan. I've been there a couple of times. Have you?
No, not for me. Not for me.
But you at least know the names of the roads, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really well known.
Of course. I mean, we all do. If you live in this country, you should know those roads. If you don't, I don't know where. Okay, maybe you're in Mindanao, but you get the idea. All right, let's move to our next poem. Okay, so our second poem is Not So Alone in Rome, or In Search of Theos Borsalino. I don't. We'll explain that later. But I found this poem to be extremely relatable. If you haven't guessed by now, this poem is about a guy, the persona, traveling throughout Rome and really enjoying all the sights and activities. I too have been to Rome, and I can tell you with 100% accuracy that this was a very accurate poem. The guy went to multiple places, some places that I haven't been to, but we did fact check. All of these places are real and can be visited, like the Leonardo da Vinci Airport. At first, I thought it was a joke, but it's a real place. St. Peter's, of course. I mean, who can pass up that? The Grand Florence Hotel, alongside many other places. And I really enjoyed this one. Really helped me remind myself of the good memories I had over there. Okay, what about you?
Uh, for me, not like I haven't really been to Rome ever,
Of
but
course, it's a bit
uh,
pricey. I understand.
yeah. But reading along this poem, it presents like a story on like a real story and how this author survived his trip to Rome. Like,
Survived.
yeah,
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
call it survive, but why survive?
because at the start he was like stating that they didn't have enough budget, and then they were going to Florence and all, and then in the middle of the trip, they really have to find ways to save their budget, and then he goes to another hotel, right? And then he tries to find alternative um, ways to experience Rome without having to spend so much. Kasi yan nga, diba? So
Yeah, he spent all his money in Florence.
yeah, and the part where meets this Pinay, no, it's like this serves as an example of how Filipinos especially will experience if ever they go to a foreign country, no? Then
Of course. I mean, why wouldn't we look for our fellow brethren and help us show us around? That's exactly what happens in this poem. Another thing I want to discuss here is the second half. Can you explain to the audience the second half?
so in the second half, he made himself an errand to pick up a pasalubong or a memento for his friend, no?
Of course. Very custom Filipino tradition. Annoying, but necessary.
And so the most basic memento he could think of was like a hat. And so he enters a shop and then he purchases a hat and he thinks that it's an authentic Italian-made hat. And as he tries to examine it further, he eventually finds like a label that says "Made in India."
Made in
Yeah,
India.
made in India.
Oh yeah, okay, I remember that part. That was a funny part. I did laugh to that, by the way. Did you?
Yeah.
I can imagine you did.
Oh.
That was a very good remark by the author.
Oh, what did you think about the form of
The
this?
form.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly it's a very basic free verse. You had one continuous stanza, no rhymes really. It was more on being very descriptive about the whole adventure, and that emphasis on description and the relation of how Filipinos would enjoy their trip in Rome. I think that's what made the poem the way it is very enjoyable. These guys. Let's move on to the third poem. Next one is on snapshots on the bay. This is a two-part poem, by the way. The fourth poem, or the second half, will be explained later. So, Blanc Snapshots. Joaquin, what do you think of it?
This is also one of his poems where a persona tries to describe his experience. In this case, he was traveling around Palawan, no? He was,
Yes, okay.
yeah.
Palawan, I've been there a couple of times. Have you?
No, I have not. Not yet.
Oh, dude, you have to. Hopefully, you'll save enough money eventually and go there. It's very beautiful. Please, carry.
So, the story starts out with the persona on a boat, and he's just basically describing what's happening on the boat and what he sees around in his horizon, no? And basically, he was just trying to take it all in, the moment.
Yeah.
While like there are like other things happening that are trying to disturb him with experiencing the moment. And then this basically, yeah, this author is like really frustrated.
Really frustrated. I mean, I wouldn't call him frustrated. I would just call him very descriptive.
Yeah,
This
he's also
poem, yeah,
descriptive. yes.
I do see what you mean. The language uses to describe the waves, the wind, and the islands. It seems a bit aggressive, but I think that's just the way he wants to describe this. I don't think he's really mad at anyone. But I do agree with you on the on how he just gums into a self-realization catharsis and enjoys the moment, as you said.
Yeah.
We can see the ending of the poem here. Let me read it. I stand in motionless reprieve at the center of this borderless noon, smug in the conceit that no cabal or catastrophe can take this away from me until that boat slows down and land claims us once more. That, I think, climax of the poem, if you would call it that. It's short, but I would call it the climax. And in there we do see that the persona is just really content with his situation and hopes that it doesn't end.
Oh, we should also read the last part, right? There's also like a last part.
Yes, of course, sorry. There were just to the as the resort wharf looms ahead, the Muslim gongs clang their welcome. Here, I was kind of confused. Muslim gongs, well, most resorts you don't really hear Muslim gongs.
Yeah.
Ones that I have managed to get to. Maybe the super rich ones have them. Not really sure. I like the last line though. The author has a very rich vocabulary, by the way, if you haven't noticed. In my brief bedazzlement, that's a big word. At the shameful opulence, another big word. Or tranquility. I'm impressed by the author's language. This is like from 2001.
Yeah.
This very strong vocabulary. All you see these days are cuz with C-U-Z.
Yeah.
You know? Oh. Okay, let's move on to the next part here. Well, Snake Island, my old friend. I have actually been to Snake Island. This is the one in Palawan. I'll flash a picture showing it off. It's a very beautiful island. When the tide goes down, the island is shaped like a snake. It's connected from one batch of islands to another. Very beautiful. If you haven't been there, Joaquin, I am very sorry that you haven't seen it. Anyways, back to the actual poem. Right, this podcast, this isn't a tourist trap or anything like that. At last we caught a photographer's sunset. I want to talk about this line in particular because the whole point of this poem, I think, is just to make a parody of the Filipino culture of taking selfies. I think we all know that whenever a Filipino goes to a very beautiful place, our initial response is not to gaze at the sunset or the beautiful sight, but to take a selfie. And do you agree with that?
Yeah, especially in this time, of course.
And of course, when we all have smartphones. And as the story progresses, I found the humor to be very dark. So essentially, the persona and his team were trying to get a good photo at Snake Island, but they had the sunset. The sunset was absolutely beautiful and described very well by the author, but they couldn't find the location. So they went to this shanty house that was actually owned by a rather dirty family, and eventually, in order to get a good photo, the persona paid off the dirty family to take a picture of the shanty. I wouldn't necessarily call it super dark humor, but it is a little change in tone compared to the other poems that we just tackled.
Yeah.
Kim, what do you think?
Yeah, like what I said earlier on, no? For this poem, it has like a bit of a dark theme, but he makes it so natural for him, no?
And I think it is natural for any Filipino. I don't know if I would take a picture by the shanty house myself. I know that house. I've actually seen it. I don't know if that's just an implanted memory by aliens, but I do remember there being a small wooden house by the end of Snake Island. Oh my gosh. Any other thoughts, okay, on this poem?
It's different from the other poems that we have tackled so far, no? Pero in this, but that's what makes his poems so interesting. He tries to put something new for his readers, for his Filipino readers, to get them more hooked. Yeah.
And yet we can still relate to all of them. Okay, our last poem for today is In Dry Season Light. This is a rather short poem, and very traditional, by the way, compared to the others. It has 7 stanzas with 2 lines per stanza, and each of the lines rhyme. For example, we have eyebrows, rainbows, rancor, amor, and so on. But Joaquin, what is the title? In Dry Season Light. What does that mean?
Basically, in the Philippines, we have 2 seasons, the sunny and the rainy seasons. In dry season light, it just means that it is summer. So you can just replace that with in summer light. So
In summer. Okay.
this poem is set during summertime. Yeah.
Hmm.
And its setting is like in a rural province. Like most of our backgrounds, basically. Coming
I
from
mean,
humble
I personally
backgrounds.
haven't lived in a rural field myself, but I think my parents and grandparents can both attest to that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yes. And
so,
yeah,
so what do we
this
have here? What are these activities that are being mentioned?
yeah, basically these activities, this poem, this is what makes the poem really special from all the other poems that we tackled, because it dwells more on Filipino activities and Filipino culture, and we definitely can relate to everything that's stated in this poem, like what we used to do as kids, like playing in the field, uh, growing up with plants, no, with the Cadena de Amor, and yeah, this is just nostalgic, basically. This whole poem.
Most nostalgic is the right word for this. Yeah.
Mhm.
This poem deep because, like, from what we remember, some of the previous poems, there was a little deeper message. But is this more on the descriptive side and just trying to be explanatory and nostalgic?
Um, yeah, just like it's simple, it's descriptive, it's really enjoyable. Um, basically, the persona tries to explain um, Filipino kid activities.
I suppose there really isn't much other than that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what gives the poem its charm.
Yeah.
Speaking of charm, what did you find charming about this whole set of poems?
Like I said, it's as you read more of these poems in this collection, because these are only selected excerpts, you'll find something that is new, something that will hook you, no? And something that's really, of course, I must say, very funny for everybody out there.
Very funny. Yeah, the Rome story was great.
And basically, the collection as a whole, in most poems other than none, the collection as a whole represents us as what represents us, like the Filipinos.
Yeah, I felt that these poems were very Pinoy
Yeah.
in nature.
Mm-hmm. And this is also really authentic, because this all happened during the author's life, no?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe whether or not he made it up or not, it genuinely feels like a real story that has been adapted into poetic form. And I think that's really great.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts?
Okay, so basically, this collection contributes so well to the 21st century literature scene because it tries to talk about the Philippines in the 21st century. We didn't have these back then. I'm pretty sure people who are older might say that we didn't go to a resort, ganon, or we didn't have like a chance to go abroad, no.
Yeah, I mean, even you didn't have a chance to go to Rome, and now we have these poems that really help us kind of live these tales, even though we haven't been to those places.
Yeah.
Would you recommend this set of poems to people?
Yeah.
I mean, I would, most definitely.
Pick up a pirated one or something.
Pirated one. Well, anyway, in any case, that's all the time we have today. Thank you, Joaquin, for joining me. Say goodbye to the fans.
Goodbye, fans. You will miss me for sure.
All right, we'll see you, Joaquin. I've been Ben. This is the Ben Cancio Show. We'll see you next week.